Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Crimes, Killers, Cults,
And beer.
and Beer. Just a crazy Florida cult survivor and a crazy Canadian cult survivor drinking beer and talking about a cult.
Oh, yeah.
It's a really special episode. This is we're going back to the Canada binge, and if you remember, it's episode 104, the insane Canadian cult episode with His Rest Christian Fellowship, the cult. Desti, my guest, is a survivor of that. And one thing that I didn't know, because all I had was the book, which is like the only source of information that there is about this cult, I didn't know that there was more to the story.
Oh, yeah.
But Desti here is the daughter of the Haywards, who were mentioned in part 1. This is actually going to be part 2. Yeah, it's an interview, but it's not a features episode because she is continuing. She's not just recapping, not just talking about what I did, on the first episode. She's continuing the story. Therefore, that this is not a features episode. This is a main episode.
Oh, yeah.
But so she's the daughter of the Haywards, who were talked about on that, and I had some very choice words with for at the end of that episode. I mean, that's probably one of my most vicious rants that I've gone on in this podcast.
No, honestly, right there with you.
and I'm glad that we talked about that before, because when I realized who you were, I was just like, I said some really nasty, harsh things about her parents.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't exactly unwarranted, so.
Yeah. So, but she's also the sister, the younger sister of Nate, the primary focus of the episode. Well, the co-star, if you will, of that episode, because it was Nate and it was Ricky.
Yeah.
And what I went back and I listened to that episode the other day, and it's just like, oh boy, this is gonna be fun.
Oh, yeah.
So Desti, I see you're drinking a beer there. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking Longhorn Lager. It's made by a local farmer up here where I live in Ontario.
Cha-ching. I am drinking Bud Light. Any of my old, any longtime listener knows that all I drink is Bud Light. I do not drink anything else, except for there was that one episode where I was drinking, screwdrivers with lemonade instead of orange juice.
Ooh, that sounds good.
It was good, but I had it in this.
There you go.
Actually, it was episode 104.
Really? Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, I said I'm drinking lemonade, but that's what it was. It was there was vodka in with that lemonade.
Nice. Yeah, you need a little vodka to help along the way. Eh?
Yeah. So the cult leader, we're just going to call her Rima, Rima Dean Ailing, and her husband David. But what was her real name? And we're only going to say it just once because we're not going to try to confuse anybody.
Yeah, her real name was Rima Dean Ailing Scott.
Scott?
Yeah.
Okay. And David was just David?
David Ailing, yeah.
Okay. And you told me Nate and Ricky's real names, but we're just going to keep them anonymous. But one thing that I mentioned toward the end of that episode, I said something. I'm like, I bet because of the timeline when Nate became a biker, like I'd be willing to bet that he was part of the Quebec Biker War. And according to you, I was right.
Yeah.
He was part of it. And I mean that's a criminal thing. I mean it's not, I'm not glorifying, oh yeah, he was part of the biker war. Yeah, but still, everything that he went through, it's not. I mean, he never stood a chance in life.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, honestly, Nate was pretty much my hero, and when it came to the biker wars, he wasn't involved like doing like running or anything or like transportation or anything like that. He went in to try and stop his buddies from doing anything stupid and stop them from getting killed. And he ended up saving somebody, like the son of one of the presidents of his chapter.
Oh
So,
wow.
yeah, he was like he saved lives is what he went into there to do. So, Nate's definitely one of my heroes.
Yeah, I'll raise my drink to that. Yeah, and it's just everything he went through, and especially when he died and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like oh, right off. I should have said this at the outset, listeners. If you haven't listened to episode 104, part 1, go back and listen to it before you continue this one. Because if you don't, if you listen to this one without hearing part 1, this episode will make zero sense to you.
I second that.
It's because it's the back part. It's the backstory, and
Yeah.
and this is a CKCB exclusive since I'm the only podcast that has covered this story. So, before we get too deep into it, tell me, because you found the YouTube episode.
Mm-hmm.
What did you find it by mistake, or were you Googling the cult?
Every 6 months or so, I like to Google and see if anybody has done anything on it ever since the book came out, because I've been really interested in talking to people about this. And like if I'm at work, just chatting with somebody, if it comes up, I'll give like a brief rundown, and people are like, "Oh my goodness!" And so when I searched up his Rest Christian Fellowship cult, your video was the first one that popped up, and I followed it to YouTube right away, sat down, watched the whole thing, and commented under it like, "Hey, thanks for doing this. I'm related to it." And you answered back, and we started talking. That was it.
Okay, I was just curious because I do the same
Yeah.
thing for Faith Assembly. If like every couple months I'll go through, and there's more and more. They're starting to pop up. Light
Yeah.
is being shown on the cult that I was raised in.
I've heard of Faith Assembly, yeah.
Yeah, that crazy
And
one.
not just from episode 10.
No,
Yeah.
well they had satellites up in Canada.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
did, but yeah, it's just lights being shown on that. I mean, this is Faith Assembly was much larger. Obviously, this is just like your basically like your cult next door type of thing.
Yeah.
Shout out to that podcast. It's really good. I've been binging that one.
Oh, yeah.
It's really good. I mean, they're not laughing about it or anything like that. They're just telling you the story and everything.
Yeah.
But there's an awful lot there because
Yeah.
it's like 2 generations worth of family that were raised in that, and they're all telling their stories.
Wow. That's incredible.
So shout out to them. But more podcasts are going to find out. They're going to find out about this book, whether it's through Googling, like it was how I found out about it, or whether it's by finding my episode. More it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So just be ready, because there's going to be people that want to talk to you. Like trying to get in touch with you.
For sure. Yeah. I'm ready.
All right. Well, I had got one more question before we dive into the story. I don't think that we really need to do a recap on it, because if you want to recap, just listen to episode 104. You need to do that anyway if you haven't heard it. But you told me that you said you have a fiance, you're engaged. What was his reaction when you told him about it, or was he part of it?
No, he's been amazing, honestly. We met, I was working at McDonald's, and we met through a mutual friend. She sent like a Snapchat streak selfie to him, and I was in the background. He was like, "Oh, who's that?" So we ended up going and getting coffee and hanging out became like really good friends, and then I was like we started getting interested in being in a relationship together, and I was like, okay, if we want to move forward in this relationship,
There's something you need to
I gotta
know.
know. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I just kind of sat him down in my parents' backyard and just kind of spilled the beans. And at first he was like really upset on my behalf that I didn't tell him the depths of what it was, but I told him the basics because
Hmm.
I was also like still learning how to describe it at that point. I met him
Yeah.
back in 2020, and at that point, Rima was still alive, but not around. She was in a different province out in British Columbia. But the remaining cult members were still trying to like regroup and form like a normal church with what was remaining.
That never works.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
Best of intentions, but it never works. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
What?
And
Because at that point, what do they know about normal?
nothing.
Exactly. They've been
Yeah,
they've been like they've had this doctrine beaten into their heads over
literally,
and
yeah.
over and over again for years and years and years, and and they can't. Their best bet would have just been to find a normal church and just start going there.
That's, yeah, later on, that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, no, Colin like stepped in right away, and to quote him directly, he was like, Colin's my fiance. Colin was like, I could tell that there's something going on from like how serious you were, and can tell like there's some shit going on. Or sorry, pardon me, stuff going on.
You can say shit.
Okay.
You can say fuck if you want.
Right. Yes. Yeah, but no, Colin pretty much ended up helping me get out. And now I live with him. Like, I was homeless at one point, and he and his family took me in immediately.
That's awesome.
And they've supported me through therapy, and I honestly would not be here without them and Colin and his family.
That's awesome. I mean, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can tell him I said that I think he's a great guy.
Yeah.
um,
He wants to meet you. He's when I told him about this, he was like, "Oh, cool." Yeah.
well, I mean, I was only in the cult that I was in for about 10 years, and then it
Hmm.
folded when Hobart Freeman died.
Right.
But the damage was done, and it took me a
Oh
long time.
yeah.
I got it. It folded when I was like around 15. I'm
Hmm.
50,
Yeah.
and I've still,
Wow.
and it's still
And it
there.
probably
There's a
still
group
affects you almost every
that I'm
day
part of
now.
on Facebook called Children of Faith Assembly, and you have to have been a member in order to get in. But there's like close to 700 people in that group,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
they're all, for the most part, it's all Generation Xers like me, and yeah, it just affected so many people, and but like I said before we got started, it's just like I didn't go through what you and the survivors of Rima went through to the extent of it, but
Hmm.
every single thing that they did, I did go through, but to
Yeah.
a much lesser degree. And I know what it's done to me. I know what it's done to like hundreds of other people that I've talked to and interacted with and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, so I can only imagine like what somebody that was there from like day one. Well, even your parents, I'm
Yeah.
sure that, I mean, they played they were part of the problem, not part of the, they, they were victims, but they were also victimizers.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
but, I mean, there's a part of me that even though, the vitriol that I had for them in part one, um, there's also a part of me that feels sorry for them. Well, not sorry for them, but feels empathy because
Yeah.
I know what it's like.
Oh man. Yeah.
Because they were they were tools of Rima. They were just basically Rima's toys, and she had brainwashed them, and so I
Her
mean,
flying monkeys.
yeah, basically. So
Wizard of Oz quote.
yeah, which I didn't watch until I was like 20.
Same, I know, right? Yeah.
Because it was a sin. It was
Because it would have exposed what was going on, right?
Yeah, but these cult leaders are crazy. But
Literally.
okay, so at the end of part 1, it it ended with the slap on the wrist sentences that your parents and Rima and David had gotten.
Yeah.
That's where part 1 ended, and that's where, as far as I knew, the story ended.
Yeah.
I knew that your parents were still alive. I knew by math that Rima and David were more than likely dead. But
Yeah.
but the story didn't end.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Alrighty. So yeah, the cult went on from up until 2020, really. So it lasted a long time. Thinking maybe, like, would it be cool if I give some backstory on Rima? Because I feel like that would.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
I want all the information.
Nitty gritty. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
even if we have to do a second part of this, I'm fine with
Yeah.
that. We can do a part 3.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
if we get to like approaching 2 hours or whatever, and you still got a lot more to say,
Yeah.
we'll wrap it up and we'll do it again.
Yeah. All right. So let me preface this with saying, any questions, fire away. I love answering questions because they help me work my way through the storyline.
Okay.
So Rima was born in Holland. Her father was a millionaire. His name was Peter Schat. And he actually invented on like ocean-going ships, you have the davits. They're the supports that lower the lifeboats into the water.
Oh, he invented that?
Yeah. And he did some pretty in-depth trying to save like Jews from the invading Nazis because he was in Zuid-Holland, Holland, which is one of the islands. And he ended up like losing all his money, going to prison. But as for Dean herself, she was 11, 12 years old when the Nazis invaded Holland. And when they bombed the dikes, the wooden structures that kept the North Sea out, Zuid-Holland is like a bowl, like this. And
Right.
they carved it out to use it for farming. And when they bombed the dikes, the ocean came in.
I actually read an article about that about a month ago.
No way! What
about
are the
how that was.
odds?
Yeah, that's crazy. And the article went. I don't remember what the article was. It was just something that I found. I was like, hey, this was interesting, and I read it.
It's read in passing, yeah.
Yeah, but it was really interesting how they constructed that.
I know, right? She used to tell us stories because she watched them set them up after the war ended. And she was like telling stories about how like they physically had to run along it, and they had like these thick cables of like rope made out of hemp and stuff. Anyway, getting sidetracked here.
That's all right. No, I just had to throw in the fact that I was recently aware of this.
That's so cool. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, she was like 12 years old when they invaded, and when they came in, they took everything. Like, you hear the stories of like how Roman soldiers used to move in. They would take over the houses. They would take all the food, the weapons, the metal, rubber, any supplies, resources they had.
Yeah, well, if you're going history in Holland, you might want to go with the Vikings instead of the Romans.
Good point. Yeah, yeah.
It was essentially the same thing until like hundreds of years later when the Romans actually...
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't the Romans, it was the British. But
yeah.
But by that time, the British, the Romans basically ran Great Britain.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the Romans.
Yeah. Um, so she was literally in the thick of it. Like I remember her telling stories about it, and like I've done fact checking. I've figured out like which ones she was telling and that were true and which ones are like embellished because she was a storyteller as part of how she got her hooks into people. She was part of the children guerrilla gangs that would run around,
Hmm.
and they would sneak into the German encampments and take back soap, food, chocolate, clothes, rubber tires for her dad's bike so that he could get to work. And it got to the point where there were a couple of times where she would be facing off with a German soldier and she would have an old bayonet and
Mm.
she actually like some
All right,
people and
be careful because I'm starting to like her.
right, I know. She starts off pretty based and then I think all that stuff just went to her head like growing up in that like I this is why I'm torn because she has reason but
Uh-oh.
she ended up in such a horrible place. It's like she took everything that came at her, internalized it, and later on it came out.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, especially killing people with a bayonet. I mean, I can imagine that would do some pretty psychological damage
Yeah,
to somebody.
to a kid.
So, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. But this is post World War II. I mean, it was pretty much all man or woman for themselves.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
mean, but like in every serial killer story, you feel bad for the kid. You don't, not the adult.
yeah, exactly, and for good reason. But she ended up having three separate marriages. One was to Hans de Jong. He was who she married in Holland. She had her first son. And then when she moved to Canada when she was about 60, she...
60?
Yeah.
Bam.
So, she lived in England for a while. She went to school there for a lot of stuff.
So at 60, she basically moved to Canada and said, "Hey, I'm going to start a cult."
Yeah, it kinda, yeah. It took 10 years for it to cook, but
Because I remember in part one, her husband left her because she was obsessed with starting this coercive control
yeah,
based church, and in her warped mind, she was thinking, "Oh, I'm going to start a really nice church," and then
exactly. And
and then it
Ricky's
just
father could see the path she was taking. He was like, "I'm out. This is beyond what I can handle." But
yeah.
honestly, I get it.
And Ricky's father is a hero too.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
really is.
for sure.
If you're
And
still listening to this and haven't listened to 104, go listen to 104 now.
yeah, otherwise you won't get it. Yeah. Yeah, by the time she started that other church thing that she wanted, it started out as she had like a group home and she went to Bible school, but she was never ordained because she wasn't allowed to become a full minister because she'd been married and divorced twice at that point. And she would go on to be married and divorced a third time.
And then married a fourth time.
Right.
David.
David was her third and last husband. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, the origin story from that point on is pretty much covered in part one. So,
Yeah.
so just take us, like if you have some, I don't know, like a couple other stories that happened during the timeline of part one, we can hear those. If not, then we can go straight to post trial.
Yeah.
Or post jail sentence.
Um, I can give some info on like what was going on during that for sure. Yeah.
What happened? What I got a question. What happened to
Yeah.
Ricky? Because that wasn't covered in the book. How did he turn out?
He ended up becoming a police officer. He's retired now, but like he's amazing. Like he's a hero.
You've met him,
I met him
or you
once.
know
Yeah.
him? Okay, oh,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Oh, that's right, because he was gone by the time you came around.
Yeah. I met Ricky about once, twice around 2009 when Rima's husband ended up passing away. He came back to Ontario for his funeral just to kind of try and reconnect with Rima and see if she had improved with age. Unfortunately, she had not, so he disappeared, never to be seen again, pretty much.
That
Valid.
sucks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
understandable, but it sucks for you.
A bit, yeah, but it took me a while at first to even realize that I was in a cult. Like, after I met him, it was another good 8, 9 years before I even heard the word cult. So I was like 17, 18 before I was willing to admit to myself that there was a serious problem, like much bigger than I thought it was originally.
Yeah. I mean, I know that too, and it's just like, and now, did you make that discovery on your own, or did somebody say, like you're telling people about it, and somebody says that's not a church, that's a cult?
There were definitely certain people in my life that helped me see that. I had several really good friends that I made on the internet, and my sister in law actually helped me a lot. Um, she was amazing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
what happened with me was, yeah, I guess I was probably about 18 or so. I was hanging out with this guy. We'd just go drive around because that's what teenagers with no lives did.
right? Like,
And
seriously.
so we're sitting there talking everything. I'm telling him about this weird church that I was in. And then, he was a few years older than me. He was probably like 22 or 23 at the time. And he's just like, what you're telling me, that's not a church, that's a cult.
Yeah.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was just like, ugh,
Yeah,
and yeah, and it's like the more I thought about it and everything, I was just like,
exactly.
no.
You're like, oh, geez, you're right. Darn it.
Yeah, but I didn't start going really full force into my discovery, as I like to call it, until like 2000. I want to say 2006 was
Oh,
like when I really, I knew I was but 2006 was when I really started researching, really
yeah.
started, connecting with people, hearing other people's stories from the same cult and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it just grew and grew and grew to the point to where I was just like, okay, yeah, I'm not only going to tell my story, you know, I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna be somebody who speaks out against cults.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're like a truth finder.
Yeah. So you met Ricky, and then the cult is up and running again after what,
Yeah.
pretty much as soon as Rima got out of jail on her little slap on the wrist sentence, six
Yeah.
months.
She was only in prison for 6 months, and there was constant correspondence going back and forth between her and mainly the kids of the cult.
Interesting.
She was very focused on making sure that, oh, if the adults leave, at least I've got the kids.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so they were like sending her like cards and letters, and she was very much seen as like a martyr after that. That was like her suffering for God that she did. And she used that to guilt trip so many people into giving her money and stuff, and yeah. And then like she would always tell stories about it, like how they played rock music 24/7 because it kept the riots from breaking out, and she charmed the guards and they would bring her like sandwiches with tomato slices, like their own lunch and stuff like that. And she was in solitary confinement, and she claimed that she asked the guard like, "Oh, why do you play rock music all the time? Can't you just shut that off?" And the cult
And,
or
and he's like, "What are you talking about, man? I love Freebird."
I know, right? Yeah. She claims that he was like, "Oh, let me show you what happens when we turn it off." And he turned it off, and within 10 minutes, there were like riots and fights breaking out,
Yeah,
prisoners
I'm calling
screaming.
bullshit. I'm calling bullshit on that.
Yeah, yeah. That's more one of her embellished tales.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dean had this pink radio. It was a wind-up radio that she would listen to radio stations, and she would always claim that there were other bunkmates that she shared it with. And later on, we found it in her stuff, and it was like old and faded.
Oh,
So
so she actually told the truth about something?
I know, shocker, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know that was possible.
Another thing that we talked about in part one was the like during the exorcisms, the black bile that was coming out of people's mouths or whatever.
Yeah.
I had speculated that it was something like maybe she had it like in a little like a tiny little balloon or something like that, and that she would just like pop it in their mouths and they would you know bite it and pop it
Yeah.
and leak it out or whatever. Because we know it wasn't we know it wasn't ectoplasm or anything like that.
No, yeah.
Any idea what that crap was?
Honestly, I have no idea, but I do know that we would have really long services, church services, and we wouldn't eat anything. Like, the services would be like 5, 6 hours long, but she would always hand out candy, and specifically Dutch licorice. So they could have been throwing up in their mouths. It could have been a stress reaction. Like,
Okay, that
I've
makes sense.
I've looked up online, um, and throwing up bile or whatever can totally be a stress reaction.
Okay, I was just curious
And
about that because of what I had speculated on part one.
yeah, yeah, totally. And some of the people she was doing exorcisms on were coming off of drug withdrawal, so that could have been something to do with some of them.
Hmm. But it definitely wasn't demonic ectoplasm.
No.
So about the all the sugar and everything. I mean,
Mhm.
okay, it's a faith healing outfit, and in faith healing, you're not supposed to take any medicine, no blood pressure, no diabetes medicine or anything like that.
No
So
painkillers.
yeah. So if you are painkillers might make the exorcism go a little bit better. So of course she's not going to allow that.
Right? Yeah.
But she would, it's just if you're a diabetic or a hypoglycemic for that matter, and you're just pounding and pounding and pounding sugar like relentlessly, then I mean
Yeah.
that is not going to be good for you. That is going to be very, very bad for you.
For sure, yeah.
But when it's just and hypoglycemia, I mean,
Hmm.
hypoglycemics, I'm hypoglycemic, but if a hypoglycemic's blood sugar drops, you need you need some sugar to to stabilize it. But it's like I know when I'm when my sugar is fine, I don't feel I don't have a you know I don't eat sugar. I want nothing to do with sugar.
Hmm. Yeah.
but I mean, I mean, whether it's diabetes or hypoglycemia, they have different reactions and stuff like that.
For
But
sure, yeah.
high blood sugar could be very bad for either one of them.
Yeah.
So I mean, one thing I was wondering is just what was the body count there? I mean, the only thing that the book talked about was was that the black kid that got exorcised and then killed himself.
Yeah. We were not allowed to talk about that specific incident. Um, I honestly never heard of anything like that. Um,
That blows my mind.
people, yeah, people getting sick and like getting close to dying because of that. Almost everybody.
But that's crazy to me that nobody actually died. I mean, if people took
Yeah.
off from it, I mean, they might have died from complications pretty soon after. I mean, I'm not saying that I hope that that's what
Oh,
happened, but I mean, I'm sure it did.
yeah. Actually, there was a family where um, two of the kids ended up passing away because they had illnesses that they were not allowed to check out. They ended up getting cancer. One of them had cancer. Another one had a spinal fluid leak and ended up dying of complications of that. And if it wasn't for Dean forbidding going to the doctor, they would have found out about it.
Right. Okay, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure.
But you had said that you had never had one of Rima's world famous exorcisms, but you said that you had witnessed some. Could you I went into some detail based on what was in the book on part one,
Hmm.
but that wasn't that was written by a police officer who was going on secondhand information.
Yeah.
So you know if you could just maybe describe it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
what was in the book and what was on part one was pretty graphic, but I'm sure
Hmm.
that was pretty light compared to what exactly happened.
Yeah, there is definitely repression of memory. Um, like for me personally, and not only me, for other people, but there are certain ones that I do remember. There were a couple that she did. One of them she did on my dad, Ralph, and one of them on another member in the cult. And it always started out as a prayer meeting, some kind of church get together event type thing, which was usually on a Tuesday night. And it started out, uh, there was like praying for 2.5 hours about random stuff, like, and then Dean would start getting angry, and she would start accusing different people of different things, and everybody would sit in a circle, and she would sit at the head in the most comfy chair with a special sheepskin blanket.
A throne, basically.
Oh yeah, exactly. And it was this ugliest orange color. Hated it, but she liked it, so
Uh, Throwback from the '70s. Orange was
yeah.
all the rage back then.
Yeah. And she would call out different people every time, but you never knew who she was going to call in next, so everybody would kind of turn on each other, or they would just be glad that they weren't the one being picked on this time. So they would help if she would choose somebody. And she would call for a few moments of silence where everybody would pray silently or speak in tongues.
Praying that they weren't the one that was about to be chosen.
Literally. I prayed
Yeah,
that often enough.
I'm laughing. I'm not laughing at them. It's just like it's just nervous, defensive laughing.
I know, right? Yeah. Besides, it's like laugh or else you're gonna cry.
Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but it's just, it's just people that have gone through shit like this. It's just like, talking about, oh, I changed my car's oil today.
Yeah, it's
Or
like no big
because-
deal, and then somebody's
because it
sitting
was-
there like,
Yeah,
for
I
us
mean,
it was a Tuesday.
yeah, if like in my episodes 10 and 11, it's like my co-host Todd, I'd known him for decades, but I had never told him the story before. It not that I was keeping it from him, it just never came up, but he was like, when I'm telling you, he's just like, what? He's just like blown away.
Like,
He's
how do you
horrified.
respond to this? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's just like, you're just sitting there like you just washed your car this afternoon or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, this was my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like abuse survivor, like domestic abuse survivors when they're, oh well, he would strangle me and then he would hit me in the head with a frying pan and stuff like that. Yeah, and meanwhile,
I
like, if you've
probably
never
deserved it. And yeah.
if you've never experienced that, it's gonna be like, it's like I said, horrifying.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you heard how worked up I got over that episode.
And you are not the first. Oh man, yeah. But yeah, for like exorcisms and stuff, we'd all be sitting in a circle praying, and then either she or somebody else would say, oh, I have a word from God that it's that person. And then they would start praying and coming up with things to accuse them of, like they're rebellious, or they watched a movie, like they saw a movie in Walmart and they didn't cover their eyes fast enough. Like, it could literally be the most inane of things, and it would be completely the exact opposite. Like, you could get praise for one thing one day, and then the next day, like, you wouldn't be allowed to have food or interaction with other people for the exact same thing. Obsessed with control.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just like I could remember my mom flipping out because we were in a grocery store, me, my mom, and my sister, and a guy comes around the corner and almost hits us with a grocery cart. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no harm, no foul. Oops, sorry about that. I thought, did me, y'all okay? Whatever. Nobody got hit, but he was wearing an Iron Maiden t-shirt. My mom panicked and prayed over me and my sister in the store right there in front of everybody. Like, now Iron Maiden is one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, totally. Oh my god, yeah. Like hearing a Slipknot in a grocery store. Love Slipknot. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like, but what it is they just beat you down with fear.
Mm-hmm.
Some
from
churches,
every angle.
Yeah, like from some churches. I mean, I'm not a church person, but some churches, they talk about God's grace, God's joy, God's love, and all that stuff. But the cult type mentality, and it's not just cults. There's other churches that do this too, that are legit churches, but they just, it's all about God's wrath and how God's going to punish you. God. It's just like, it doesn't sound like God loves me. It sounds like God hates my guts based on what you're saying,
Yeah. And at that point, it's like, why do I even want to be in this religion?
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, if I'm going to heaven, if I'm going to go to heaven and God's going to be like that, it's not much different than what you're telling me hell is like.
Exactly, yeah.
But
yeah,
and I believe in God, but but I don't believe that God is this, this. It's just like the way God is portrayed by not just cults, but some of these other regular churches. It's just like he's a total narcissist.
Exactly.
And I don't see God like that. I don't see.
Yeah.
I mean. God's not going to strike you down if you step out of line or anything like that. And it's just, but cults, they will capitalize on on that and make you fear. It's like, oh my God, and if I leave it's always, this church is the only church on the planet that is
Yeah.
going to heaven.
Yeah, we are God's warriors, and we are training because He's gonna come back, and we're the only faithful few that He's gonna be able to use because there's nobody else left.
Yep. And
Yeah.
everybody that existed on the planet prior to the cult's existence, sorry about your luck, but you're going to hell.
Yeah.
or you're in hell.
Yeah, and
because you didn't live in the speck of time that this cult leader was alive and sit under him or her.
yeah, which is ultimately usually their downfalling.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, continue. It's important to put these in there, and I say it in every episode, but I need to because, what?
Yeah.
If the episode might be somebody's first episode of the show, so it's important that's in every episode.
Exactly. No, yeah,
So-
I totally agree. Yeah.
So exorcisms,
Yeah.
get your exorcisms.
Oh,
Sorry.
man. One soul, please.
No, laughter is the best medicine.
Exactly. It's in the Bible. Yeah, and then there would be a lot more praying, and people would be sitting there, and then Dean would get up out of her chair and go over to somebody, and she would start screaming at them in their face, get them to kneel down on the ground, apologize to everybody in turn, and then her chosen fellow leaders, who were always a step under her, would come up and they would all lay hands on this person and start praying for them and trying to cast out this demon of rebellion or whatever. And I think the first one I saw, I was like 6 or 7 years old. And watching that happen in front of me, and this person went from a kneeling position to falling over on the floor and shaking, convulsing. And Dean starts cackling like a witch. And later she claimed that it was like holy laughter, but I think she was just like hysterical. She was on some kind of high.
Yeah, she was eating it up. She was loving every minute of it.
Absolutely. And this poor person, like, they were never the same mentally, but like nobody was. But it was normal. And hearing, like, you hear like The Conjuring, the third one, where that little boy.
I haven't seen the third one.
Oh, it's so good. You should see it.
That's the Devil Made Me Do It one?
Yeah, the one with the nun. Yeah.
Yeah, that one has like the least amount of truth in it of any of them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But the way that they portrayed like possession, the deep voice coming out of somebody who should not have had a deep voice. I heard that. And I think it was just stress and panic attack, and when the person would start convulsing, everybody around would start cheering and clapping like they'd done something amazing, when this person was probably having
an
emotional breakdown or a seizure. Yeah.
Emotional breakdown or a stroke.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then they would get up and they'd be shaking, and they'd feel like I remember seeing like a bit of like white foam come to the surface, and somebody fell over and hit their head on the piano once, and we almost ended up having to call an ambulance to come get them because they weren't waking up, and then they woke up, and
then, oh, no need to go to the doctor.
Our prayers have brought them back. No, doctors, we were not allowed to go to doctors.
Yeah,
No.
It's faith healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a little bit of, the Hobart Freeman, the cult leader of the cult that I was in, he died of preventable diabetes complications.
Oh my God.
And and he also had gangrene due to the diabetes, which could have also been taken care of.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
The only thing that I have to say about him, he practiced what he preached.
Yeah. That's right.
But it cost him his life, though.
Yeah.
And but Yeah, faith healing is, God, I mean, yeah, if
It's a
you,
bit presumptuous at times.
but it's just they, yeah, just to think that all you have to do is say a prayer and stop taking your blood pressure medication, stop taking your insulin, stop taking your, you know, like if you have like mental issues and have to take like Prozac or something like that, stop all that and everything. Well, mental issues, mental health and everything, that, if you have mental illness, and that's obvious demon possession.
Oh, yeah. I never learned about anxiety or depression or ADHD, autism, bipolar, anything like that until I was like 17. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah, it was demon possession.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Rima comes back, and like, how did she how was she the same, or was she different? Like before she started, like getting dementia, which if it happened to anybody else in the cult, it would have been demon possession. But but how did she get, when she came back, how did she, was she different or was she the same as far as like what, from what she had been before?
Definitely worse. When she came back, that happened before I was alive, but stories that I've heard from my siblings, my parents, other people, she was way more intense. She completely freaked out. It was like a game changer for the cult. On the one hand, it was good because it kept it from growing. So before that, she was all about adding new people. After that, it was all about keeping who was there.
Keeping the handful of people that she had.
Yeah, there were only ever really 30 people at a time.
Right. I remember that from part one.
Yeah. And she got obsessed with starting homeschooling, and after that, the Children's Aid Society, which is Child Protective Services, started getting involved. There were multiple reports done on the children that were there. And the agents were amazing. They did what they could with the information that they had, but unfortunately the justice system back then was not as thorough as it is now. Like, that was, I think DNA testing wasn't even really a thing when that happened, or not at least popularly used. So it was...
Well, DNA wasn't really a thing in Canada until Willie Picton.
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't even like really anything to do with this case, but it kind of shows like how not in depth the investigations would go.
Yeah.
And after that, she would constantly be freaked out that the phone lines were tapped, that there were people watching in the windows. Like, she became hugely paranoid. And she would start taking everybody on random trips. Like, we would go camping an hour away. Or she would go on a cruise to the Bahamas because the slipperies were coming, as she called them.
The slipperies?
Yeah, there were code words for everything.
Was the slippery like the police or something?
Child Protective Services, yeah.
Or as I called them in part one, case worseners.
Case worseners, yeah.
Yeah, it's like that was a infamous Billism, getting tongue-tied, and that happens frequently.
Yeah.
And I leave it in because it's funny.
Exactly. That's what makes this cult podcast thing awesome, yeah. And I mean, it was for good reason that Dean was worried about the case worseners, because there were times where they would show up, like for consecutive follow-ups, like surprise showing up, but more often than not, it was just paranoia and there wasn't anybody there.
Yeah.
And also,
she always felt like somebody's watching her.
I just feel like somebody's watching me. Yeah.
the second time in like 2 weeks that song has come up in
That's
an
hilarious.
episode.
I wonder why.
Well, the first time it wasn't a cult; it was a serial killer. But
Oh. No, that's more like creep Radiohead.
that too.
Yeah.
But,
But yeah, she was worried for a good reason because Nate, my brother, was involved in the biker gang that he was a part of, and he spoke out for my family. I later found out that it was to try and protect my brothers and I. And he would sometimes get his buddies to follow my mom around in her van. And she'd just be driving somewhere, and suddenly this line of 10 or 12
good on him.
bikers
Good on him.
in
I love
full
it.
regalia, like patch jackets on, helmets fully embellished, like wearing like all their rings, all their insignias, like makeup, everything. And that's when you know they're on the warpath because they're wearing their colors.
Right.
And they would just follow her for like 10 miles, and then she'd be like freaking out, and then they just turn off.
The next exit, just a random exit, boom, gone.
Exactly. And she knew they were watching her because she recognized some of them. And
was he ever part of the stalking crowd, for lack of a better term?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And he wouldn't just limit it there. Like, he would actually come to the house. Like, he wouldn't come every year because he couldn't emotionally manage it. Surprise, surprise.
Understandable.
Yeah. But he would, like, I talked to him a couple of years before he died, and he told me point blank, like, no, yeah, I wasn't coming to try and convince Mom and Dad, Ralph and Sharon, to convert or leave the cult or anything. I don't care about them. I was coming back to make sure you and our brothers weren't having the same shit happen to them. And obviously...
But you were.
Yeah, they got real smart about hiding it. That's pretty much the best thing that came out of that.
It just speaks volume to the amount of influence that Ricky had on Nate. Because Ricky, when he went to the police, like as we talked about in part 1, he's just like, he's telling them everything that had been happening to him. He's telling the police this, and he's just like, I don't care about me.
Yeah.
I care about Nate.
Yeah. And
then to find out that Nate did the same thing, that's incredible.
And I'm trying to do the same with my parents and other people that are still affected by it. Like, I'm not letting them go. Like, I could go cold turkey, stop contacting, but like those who are younger than me, I've been pretty successful in helping them have a living chance in the world. And not just me. There was another incredible woman. I call her my bonus mom. Dean would get it in her head that she had to punish my parents somehow, and I would be sent off to another family in the cult, and I would stay with them for 3 months or so. And most frequently, I would be sent to stay with this other family that, like, they had 5 or 6 other kids, and I would be dropped off. The dad would come home, and he'd be like, 1, 2, 3, 4. We have an extra kid. How did this happen? Hello, extra kid. Welcome home. So they never treated me like I was an outsider. One of the only ones do that.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like that sounded like an ultimate dad joke right there.
Yeah. Exactly. And being traded around to the other families, like, I was not in the foster care system like Nate was. I cannot imagine what that must have been like. But
did you ever meet the foster parent that Nate like really bonded with? Did you meet that guy?
Yeah. Yeah. He's amazing. He also kept coming back to check on us. He was
Awesome.
actually like only 10 minutes down the road from us, which was crazy.
Yeah, that is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But good. Good that it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, despite everything, like all the horrors of part one and everything, there's some, there's some feel good parts in part two,
Yeah.
which is good.
Yeah.
When this was going, on, it's just like no, it's just, like during all of this, okay, you said that she got worse. Okay, it's just like, what was, okay, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The abuse got worse. How?
Prior, you could at least figure out when it was coming and you knew how to avoid it. Afterwards, there was no rhyme or reason and you had no idea when she was going to spaz out.
Like you could just be cooking dinner for her, and then all of a sudden she'd walk into the kitchen and it'd just be like, ah! Exorcism.
Yeah. Or like take the pot of boiling pasta and like flip it off the stove at you. And usually that would be at my mom.
Damn, I was just stabbing in the dark. I didn't realize I had just nailed it.
Yeah, it's almost like you know a little bit about what this could be like.
Well, I never experienced that, but I've covered enough like cults to
Yeah.
but still, in fact, the episode that I recorded earlier today about the Word of Life cult is just like a lot of the stuff that you've described about Rima and everything. It's just like if you listen when that episode comes out, you listen to that, and you're going to be like, "Yeah, been there, done that."
Yeah.
Because this one was a very brutal one. But
yeah.
So I mean, was there anybody that she kind of like focused on? Because in part one, it was basically Nate and Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anybody that she focused on? I mean, was it you? Was it you? Are you the youngest of Ricky's? Or are you the oldest of Ricky's younger siblings?
No, I'm the youngest of Nate's siblings. Yeah.
Nate, that's what I meant.
I figured. Yeah. Yeah.
But
my mom.
So you've got a couple older brothers and or sisters.
Yeah.
Did she target them, and did she target you?
She started off with targeting my mom. Then she targeted my older brother. And she was trying to make them become pastors. I think she wanted my mother and my older brother, to like follow her in her footsteps, but they were too stubborn or selfish for her liking. Shocker. And
does that mean that they didn't like what was going on, or were they like all in?
They
like
would
everybody else
backtalk. They would be like, okay, this is too far. Like, they would try and speak up and like calm Dean down or distract her, and then that would end up making them become the targets instead. And she definitely focused on me hugely my entire life. There were there was a separate family. There was another family. When I was around, there were 4 or 5 main families, and the parents of 3 of the 5 families came into the cult after the prison thing happened. After the charges.
When shit was even worse.
Yeah. When it was
I don't see how a new person is just like, okay, welcome to the church. Here's the Rima Bill of Rights, and you read that. And Paul fumbled through that in part one, and it's just like, and it's just like, I'm sorry, if you hand that to me, I mean, okay,
Yeah.
thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Waffle House, and then I'm gonna down a bottle of vodka or a 12-pack of beer, and I'm never going to come back here again.
Yeah.
Because just that whole thing about the her the Rima Constitution or whatever, the Rima Bible, the Rima Commandments, just that, just that
Yeah.
is it's just like I'm going to
Should have
run
been
as fast as I can,
yeah, like flashing
faster than I.
red flags. Yeah. And
Yeah,
as somebody who was born into it, I could tell like that there was something not right when I read that when I was baptized when I was 12 and I was reading through it. I wanted to get out of there. That's when I was like there was something in here that was like this is not right. This is not what's meant for me, and I didn't know what it was. I would later find out what was going on, but there was something instinctual in me even then that was like, I don't like it here.
so were you pushing back?
hmm
And that was why Rima focused on you. I mean, if you can, I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. But if
Yeah.
you can, I mean, yeah, it's just like, okay, so you were rebelling and everything, and yeah, I was rebelling too, and
Yeah.
the cult that I was raised in, and when we get done, I'm going to tell you some stories.
Oh
but
boy, yeah.
but but that couldn't have gone well for you because
Yeah.
so were you ever subjected to this physical torture that Ricky and Nate and dozens of other people were subjected to?
Not in the same way. Nate definitely went through worse than me.
And Ricky.
And Ricky. Oh god. Ricky went through the worst of it all.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start rebelling until I was 13 or 14. Before that, I was more take the path of extreme submission, like make a doormat out of myself. But then she started picking on my dad and my brothers, and not for anything in specific, but just because they were men. And I hated that. I was so pissed that she would pick on my dad and brothers and blame them for just being men. And I would start speaking up to her. No, she started targeting me when I was 9. I was the oldest of that generation of kids. I was of the Gen Zers of the cult. It started with fasting, enforced fasting. Every February, we were only allowed to eat 4 slices of buttered bread and a single 8-ounce glass of water. And that was like babies, like developing children, to working people. Like if you were working in like an arborist, like trimming forest, like doing landscaping. Even then,
A piece of bread and a glass of water, that's your meal for the day.
yeah,
The entire day.
for a month straight. And my mom would just go along with it. And after a week or so would pass, she would like sneak me pieces of ham, or like she would let me have milk and stuff, and my brothers. And if she noticed that like my dad was buying lunch at work, she wouldn't say anything. but that
You
was
weren't even allowed to eat while you were out,
no,
like working. You weren't allowed to pick up a snack or a lunch at Burger King or whatever.
no. If anybody found out you'd done that, exorcism for you.
God, and what was she eating during this time?
Steak fried in butter, gravy and beans.
Yeah.
Kid you not? Oh
No,
yeah, we had.
I believe it. That's why I asked you, because I totally believe that. How did she
Yeah.
justify it?
She had to keep herself fed to be able to hear from the Lord properly, to be able to guide us, because we were lost sheep. I know, right? Like,
Oh my God, that's the worst.
like she couldn't even come up with like reasonable excuses.
I mean, it's just like, basically what she's saying is, I have to eat normally so that I can function normally. The rest of y'all can piss off.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's the worst. That's the worst excuse that I've ever heard a cult leader give for anything.
Yeah, and I think she
Just
also
like,
had.
I have to eat. And she didn't work. She didn't work. She just sat there and just lounged around all the sloth. That's a deadly sin.
Oh yeah.
She just slothed around and everything while people were actually they're doing physical labor, but she needs to eat regular to keep her juju up so that she can, communicate with God.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Joe Schmo over here, cultist, cult victim, is he's a roofer or something like that, or construction worker, or, a truck driver or whatever, something that, like, gives like a shitload of, you're gonna get hungry doing all that stuff really quick because of the physical toll that it puts on you.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's just sitting there getting fat because, she's eating normally.
Yeah. And actually,
oh my God,
where she got most of her money was charging my dad for counseling services and back pay for her raising Ricky. Yeah, sorry. Hey, now I did it. Raising Nate.
Nate.
Yeah, and I recently spoke with my aunt and uncle. They were around back then. When that all went down, they were in the States, so they weren't able to. They tried to come and rescue my dad and Nate and Ricky, but they were in the States visiting relatives that were about to pass away.
Yeah.
So they weren't able to, but they basically said that they didn't really know my mom, but she was a victim. Like, she joined the cult when she was 14.
Yeah, but she also was a willing participant.
Exactly. And my dad was a weak-willed individual, which is true.
Well, yeah, because going back to part one, when the first time that they went to court, Rima's just like, he's an idiot. He can't talk.
Yeah. And, yeah. It's hard to make sense talking about it afterwards.
I totally get it, and mad respect for you, for coming forward. You're what, 24?
Yeah.
Yeah, mad respect for you, coming forward like this, because I mean it's hard.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you.
I'm serious. I mean, I was in my probably early 30s or something before I really, got deep into my, what I call it, the discovery phase.
Yeah.
Which is where, the step one is the realization. Step two is discovery.
Mm-hmm.
And discovery is when, when you start researching, when you start like trying to find out information.
Yeah. And really, I'm only 2 years out of it, so.
Right. So mad respect. Seriously. um, yeah, it's really impressive. So what? So it sounds to me like she would. It's like, okay, you were kind of rebelling. You said that she was taking it out on your brothers and your dad,
Yeah.
and your mom.
Hmm.
What was she doing to them?
So there was this thing called censorship. It was like excommunication. It was like being put out of a church, except you weren't actually put out of. You didn't get the benefit of being put out of the church. You were
This
set
came this
aside.
this came. You still had to be there. It's just like in the episode that the Word of Life episode that I recorded earlier today. It's like that Black Mirror episode where people would cancel you.
Yeah.
Or it's just like you were there, but nobody could see you.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to smile. You weren't allowed to eat with other people. You weren't allowed to sing. You weren't allowed physical contact with other people. Like, I remember my mom being censored when I was 6 years old, running up to her for a hug and her taking me by the shoulders, pushing me back and saying, "I'm sorry, honey, not right now." And I wouldn't be told what was going on until I was 13 or 14 and being censored myself for speaking up about how my dad and brothers were being treated. And we would have to write extensive letters of fake apologies to the church leaders and the elders.
But
And
did she? Did she? I mean, I know that your mom and dad got physical abuse, but did your you said that you didn't physically, but emotionally. Um,
yeah, emotional
but
abuse,
what about
neglect.
your brothers?
Um,
How many kids do they have, by the way?
Nate, my two brothers, and me.
Okay,
Yeah. I
and
did.
Nate was adopted.
Yeah. Nate's technically my stepbrother. He was from my dad's first marriage. Um, my dad's that's a whole other
Oh, okay.
story.
Well,
But yeah.
yeah, that's different in the book.
Yeah, yeah. Like kudos upon kudos to that detective. But like there's only so much you can know from secondhand.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, that's Carter, I think his name was.
Hmm.
He was incredible. Like I kept saying throughout that episode, I want to have him on. I want to have him on.
Yeah.
But and I still do.
Yeah.
But but yeah, but that would be a features episode.
Yeah.
But but yeah, but still, it's just like the way it was described in the book and in episode 104 was Nate was like adopted from an adoption agency, and Paul and I were questioning how that was even possible,
Yeah.
considering your mom was 14 at the time and he was 24. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad's first marriage, he was dating this girl and they broke up, and then like 8 months later she's like, "I'm 6 months pregnant and it's yours." And then he's like, "Okay, I have to be responsible." And he didn't really count or anything, but when the baby came out, he ended up being obviously not from my dad. I believe his father was Jamaican or something like that, or half Jamaican, something like that.
Yeah, the picture I saw, he didn't exactly look Caucasian.
No, yeah, he was only half Caucasian. He was part Native American, part Jamaican or something like that, I believe, yeah.
But this was prior to the cult.
Yeah, and that's kind of
Okay.
how my dad and Nate got involved in the cult in the first place. Um, I'm not exactly sure how. I've heard a lot of different stories. I've never been able to get the truth of what happened. But
Was it an arranged marriage?
between my dad and my mom, yes.
Oh.
Yes, that there were, except for one, every single
Okay,
marriage was arranged.
Also, okay, that sheds a lot of light on it too, because because in the book it comes off as if he was 24 and she was 14, but
Yeah.
the fact that it was a cult thing in an arranged marriage, I mean, it doesn't make it right, but it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. It was actually more like my mom was 19, 20, my dad was 29, 30, which is still
Well,
not
in the
much
book
better.
it says 24 and 14.
That's when they first met initially. Then my mom did
Uh,
all the cooking and cleaning for the group home, and my mom and dad were, as part of their room and board, required to be live-in social workers in the group home.
hmm.
And my mom was 15, 16 when she started, and she was required to make all the food, and if any food went bad, it, like, she was starved for it.
Hmm.
And basically, when my mom was like 19, Rima went up to her and she was like, oh, Nate's this little guy. He doesn't have a mom. You should really, if you actually care about people here, you should really consider, like, offering to, like, be his mom, because he calls you mom. And he did, because she babysat him all the time. And then Rima went to my dad and was like, Nate's getting really attached to Sharon and he needs a mom. Like, you should really consider doing the responsible thing here. And they were both like, oh yeah, poor Nate, I guess. And you're saying that we should, and they were basically
Hitched.
blackmailed into it. Yeah.
Okay, but it doesn't make it right, but that still makes a lot more sense than what was
Yeah.
in the book.
Yeah.
But yeah, no offense, Miss Detective Carter. You are a rock star, sir.
Amen. Yeah.
But yeah, and so so when you know, okay, the cult's running down. Yeah, it's winding down. Rima starts coming up with dementia, which if anybody else, like I said, had gotten dementia, it would have been demon possession. So
Yeah.
so it's winding down, and then all of a sudden, you know, I can only imagine that when she started spiraling, she probably got even worse
Oh God, yeah.
before she.
It got worse before it got better.
Yeah, tell us.
Yeah. The I did not get any physical abuse from her. She did slap my older brother. Not like, I mean, Nate's story is separate, like, from part one of this
Right,
episode.
right.
But my older brother, like, who she fixated on for the first 20 years of his life or so.
Did she try to have sex with him?
I think so. I could never get the truth out of that, but she spent a lot of time alone with him, and he would look very uncomfortable. And he had some issues of that regard, so I definitely think so. Yeah. I ended up, not from the brother I was just talking about, but my other brother ended up doing some stuff to me when I was like 4 to 6. So, and like my grandma would slap me, and my brothers were more physically abusive. Not from Dean. And when she got dementia, I found out, like, she would go into these dementia rambles where she wouldn't be lucid, and she would just, like, sob and confess, basically. And some details started coming out, and at one point, I was one of the main caretakers for her after she got
Lucky
dementia.
you.
Yeah.
Lucky you.
Yay! And everybody else was just glad that it wasn't them.
Now, I'm pretty, I know it's probably not documented or whatever because she didn't go to doctors and everything, but I'd be willing to, on top of being a narcissist, she's probably also bipolar.
Definitely makes sense, yeah.
And combine narcissism and bipolarism with dementia, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Yeah.
So take us through how that experience went with you as the unlucky, the poor bastard that has to take care of this frickin' demon from hell.
Yeah, so she ended up losing her farm after the cult, and then she lost her farm again when her other farm, like the owners came and asked it back. She was like,
yeah, because she was renting. She didn't own the property. She was renting.
Yeah.
And
the renters owned a golf course, and they asked for it back because they had family members that wanted to move in there. And she ended up moving in with my family.
Oh, yay!
And
Yay! Happy, joy, happy, joy.
Yeah,
Generation Xers will get that.
She called dibs on my parents' bedroom, the master bedroom with an ensuite bath.
Of course she did.
Yeah, and my parents took my bedroom, and I had to move into the basement with the brother.
Oh, God. I can imagine that went... I can imagine that didn't go well.
No, it didn't, yeah. And to get a little personal here, I have a bigger chest. I started developing quite early, and I couldn't so much as stretch before she was on me, calling me like a slut and a whore and saying like, your husband will only want you for your body. And as a child growing up, that was nothing that was in my head aside from what was triggered. But like that did horrible things to my self-image and concept of what that kind of stuff is supposed to be like.
Well, just because, I mean, our listeners can't see you, but I can. You're a beautiful woman.
Well, thank you.
But the thing is, it's just like I've seen this come up in, with like cult, like cult stories and whatnot. It's just like you've got an older abusive woman who specifically the Gertrude Baniszewski case, which is horrible.
Yeah.
Her main beef with oh God, I'm having a brain fart. I can't remember the poor girl's name.
The victim, yeah.
That's crazy. We covered that episode.
Yeah, I wish I could remember. I'm horrible with names.
But yeah, her main issue is because this poor girl was prettier than all of her daughters.
Yeah.
And she took it out on her. And it sounds like that's what happened. Was happening there.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also had asthma, and if I would so much as rattle my inhalers accidentally while trying to take them, I would be forced to go kneel in front of each person in the room and apologize to them for being disruptive and trying to draw attention to myself.
Inhalers rattle when you hit them.
Yeah.
Just like a vape does.
Yeah.
Except it's louder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I had asthma for a little while. I don't anymore, but
Yeah.
but I know you hit those things, and it sounds like you're taking a bong hit.
It does, yeah. And oh
It's
my
like
god.
almost as loud, and it sounds exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
this is
so
just regular vape juice. There's no THC in here. I have to say this because I am a truck driver. I have
yeah.
a CDL, and if I could legally do it, I would, because
Right.
it would make my body hurt less. But
Oh yeah. Hey, if you ever come on up to Toronto, Ontario, I'm sure we can.
oh, it's on the verge of being legalized here in Florida, but I still can't do it because I'm a truck driver.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So anything that'll help ease the pain, I can't do.
Yeah.
So I drink.
Side note, after having these experiences, it's remarkable how much like physical disability and in pain you're in after dealing with years upon years of stress and trauma. Like it stores itself in your body.
Mm-hmm. It waits.
Yeah.
It waits.
It waits and then
Yeah,
it devours you.
The older you get, a little bit more gets released with every birthday that you get. It's like, okay, you turn 25, here's a little bit more. You turn 26, here's a
Oh,
little
yay.
bit more.
I'm looking so much forward.
I'm just messing with you.
Oh, phew.
I'm just messing with you. But
So yeah,
so
being the
when you were I mean, this is probably a stupid question, but when you were in the basement living with that one brother, did it become a regular occurrence?
No, because I would have told on him, and he knew it.
And he would have gotten an exorcism.
Or sent to boot camp, maybe. I don't know. My brother's...
Boot camp? Tell me about the boot camp.
It was a Bible camp.
A TTI camp.
Yeah. And the all the millennials went there of the cultists. I did not. My brothers did. And I went to a different thing. It was called Group of Seven, like the artist group, except spiritual shit, like memorizing Bible verses and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Dean was weirdly fixated on being alone with the kids. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And when I was her...
Sylvia Likens.
Yes, yeah, from the Gertrude.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was just
it popped up. Yeah, you gotta say it.
Yeah, because it was bothering me that I couldn't remember her name. But
yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
We got there eventually.
Yeah, sorry. It
it's
really
okay.
was bothering me because you got to say her name when you mention Gertrude.
Yeah, honoring the victims. I love it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway,
no,
continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I just had to do it.
Yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. It got to a certain point when I was around 17 where Rima started having these crazes where she would start confessing the shit that she'd done. And there was one point where she freaked out that I was going and helping her and being alone with her. And she was at one point screaming that the cops were going to come and charge her and take her back to prison, that I was going to be taken away and she was going to be like charged with like trying to kiss me and stuff. And I was like,
did she do that?
No, thank God.
Thank God.
Yeah. More beer.
I'll drink to that.
But no, she thought, she was paranoid that she was going to be accused of it. And there was a few weeks where I didn't have to be her caretaker. The most glorious weeks of my life at that point. Could just spend time with the dogs instead of her. Amazing. Didn't last forever though, of course.
Humans don't deserve dogs.
Oh, tell me about it. No, actually, it's funny you mention that because we always had like rescue dogs. Like my mom would go to the SPCA or the local shelter or whatever, pick up a dog and bring it home, rehabilitate it. And she was amazing to the dogs. She was gentle, kind, never hit them. And it was a running joke that the dogs were treated better than her own kids were. And she would like laugh and admit it.
Wow.
Yeah. And it took, when I got my own dog, Maple, I love her. I'll have to show you a picture of her. It took me 4 years to bond with her because I felt jealous of any attention that she would get. And I feel so silly saying that because it's a dog. Like, A, they deserve all the love they can get. B,
Yeah.
I'm getting love too.
They'll give you give them all you give them all the love that you can get. They're gonna return that tenfold.
Yeah. It took me 4 years to learn to trust her. And when I did, now, like, she wormed her way into my heart with those soft brown eyes, and I would kill for her. For legal reasons, I'm joking, but, yeah. Anyway.
Please don't tell me that they didn't, like, take the dog from you and you never saw it again. Please don't tell me that.
They tried, but Colin made sure that didn't happen.
How long have you been with Colin?
Just about 4 years now.
Okay, so like pretty much right after it ended, he was there.
He was there for the last 9 months of it. And he would
that's amazing.
He never let me go to a service alone, like a church service alone after he found out, like after I told him the truth. Like, I swear, like a week, I think it was, after he and I started seeing each other, like hanging out, becoming best friends, he walked in on my mom screaming at me, shoving me backwards into my room because my shorts were too short and I was wearing a bathing suit top and it was 100 degrees outside.
And you were 20.
Yeah. And I paid rent, had my own phone, bought my own food, and I think she was mad that I didn't have any more money stashed in my room that she could steal, but whatever it was, he walked in on her screaming at me and shoving me back into my room, and he made up a story about how my brother had to be picked up from work, got me in the car, drove me to the baseball diamond down the road, and just hugged me until I felt better. Like, and that sums up how he's been since day one. Like, I call him my angel because he literally is my angel.
I was gonna say that. It's just like he came in, he came in like really at the right time.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that if he had come in like say several years earlier, you wouldn't have been an adult, and they would have just like,
Yeah,
they would have.
He would have been like, "I'm out of here. See ya, never."
Well, you would have told him, "You got to go. I can't see you."
I would have tried to convert him and get him to join.
Exactly.
But 6 months before I met him.
You still wouldn't have been able to meet. You still wouldn't have been able to be with him because she would have paired him up with somebody else.
Yeah.
And you up with somebody else. Did she ever try that?
Yep, I was slated, like, I was almost engaged to somebody else by the time I was 15. And the other person was the same age as me, but it was a family that had had enough, left, and she never stopped trying to get them back. Never managed to because the mom and the dad are amazing.
Nice.
But
are you friends with the guy, like, to this day?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how many relationships you can keep when you're not toxic yourself.
But yeah, he really was your angel because he was there he appeared in your life at the precise moment when you really needed him the most.
He appeared one day shy of a month and a year to Nate dying. I swear to God, Nate found him and sent him along to help me.
And it's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, hearing this side of it from somebody that was actually in it based on reading a book and
Yeah.
everything. And, and especially just like what happened after the book,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I know my listeners are going to say the same thing, but, okay. In part one, we're talking about how like a lot of the kids were homeschooled. Well, all of the kids were homeschooled
Yeah.
and everything, but not really, because
Yeah.
those refugees from Cambodia
Mm-hmm.
and everything, they didn't even know how to speak English. But
Yeah.
Rima's just like, we're homeschooling them, but
Yeah.
they can't even speak English. So it's just like, that was one of my favorite parts of the episode, where it's just like Rima's just like, they left Cambodia because God told them to come be here with me. No, it wasn't. It wasn't to escape a genocide. It was to come be with her.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But, so tell us about the school.
Yeah, so it started small. Rima's kids were going to public school and she saw some of the books they were reading. I think one of the triggers was one of the Harry Potter books and it was like, ooh, magic. Yeah, so that would have been
well, Harry
90s?
Potter. That's considerably, but that's before Nate and Ricky. Oh, no, excuse me. That's after Nate and Ricky.
Yeah. So it didn't. It must not have been Harry Potter. One of the Harry Potter books definitely triggered it starting. It might have been Lord of the Rings, something like that.
Well, those books have been around. I think those books were written back in the 40s.
Yeah, I think it was one of the Lord of the Rings books, or like a Stephen King novel. They were. Ricky
Gotcha.
was supposed to. Yeah, Ricky was supposed to do a book report on one of them. Rima saw it, flipped out, and tried to get the books banned from the school.
Doing a book report on a Stephen King novel? That would have been freaking awesome!
Right? Like, yeah.
Stephen King is one of my favorite authors.
Same. Yeah, my father-in-law has most of his books, and I just love it. I love it.
I haven't read a lot of his newer catalog from like 2000 on.
Yeah.
Because after he wrote Cell, that book was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the story was great, but the ending was just like, it's like it's like King was just like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And the movie was 10 times worse. But
yeah.
But so it's just like, I haven't read any of Stephen King's newer stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
I've read probably 90% of his books prior to 2000.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah.
But anyway, continue. Sorry,
No,
hashtag.
yeah.
But I digress.
But I digress.
Basically, my parents chose to be involved in the church rather than focus on my education and my brother's education.
Mhm.
So, with the homeschool curriculums, they stopped teaching me when I was in grade 2.
Oh damn.
Yeah, and then my brothers kind of helped me along until grade 4. And I was always responsible. Like after kindergarten, I was always responsible to get my school done. And if I didn't get it done or if I got low marks, it was my problem, not my parents. And I was talking to my mom for her birthday the other day, and she was saying like she never knew what I was doing in school.
Mm.
And by the time I got to grade 9, I had video school, but there were a few times where there were 2 times that I got a few months behind in school. Like, I used to be so ashamed of myself, but now I'm kind of proud of myself. Like, only 2 times? Wow.
Yeah, but you
I guess I was a responsible kid.
you also wound up getting your GED and going to college. So
exactly. Yeah, and I was not allowed to go get my GED.
So you did that after the fact, like recently, in the past couple years.
Um, I still don't have a GED, because I was able to go get my degree without it by applying through mature student status.
Oh, cool.
And my college is like really helpful to previously homeschooled kids. So yeah,
That's really cool. I mean,
yeah,
everything really did work out the best for,
yeah,
the second generation of this cult in the
for
long
sure.
run.
Yeah, yeah. And when I got behind the second time, I was in grade 10, and I had no idea how to catch up. And I knew my parents weren't going to help, so I went to Dean, Rima, and I basically said, "Hey, I need help. I'm behind. I feel horrible about it. I don't know what to do." And she went real calm, real quiet, and was like, "Okay, thank you for telling me. Can I speak to your parents?" And she spoke to them about like 20 minutes and kind of chewed them out for not taking care of my school or whatever. And then asked to come back on the phone with me. And I was put under censorship and sent away to live with another family. And I wasn't allowed to eat for like anything for almost a week and a half.
Mm.
And yeah,
Damn.
that's definitely a lot of issues came from that.
The Rima diet is not recommended.
No, yeah, exactly.
5 out of 5 doctors say, run!
Yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking about going out to Rima's grave and planting poison ivy on it and maybe like pissing on her grave. Wanna come?
She kind of like went from there and it just got worse and worse. She found more and more stuff that she didn't like or didn't approve of, and then eventually was like, okay, you know what? I'm just pulling my kid out of school, and started up her own. That's where the Bible camp, Bible school slash boot camp thing started up.
The TTI camp.
Yeah.
Let's call a spade a spade. It's a TTI camp.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not kidding.
But
That's
who ran it? How did she do? Because she's not making a shit ton of money. I mean, she got evicted from that old stone building
mhm.
and all that stuff. So, how did she fund this endeavor?
My dad.
What was your dad doing for a job?
He worked for Datacrown for most of his life, which was like he gets pension from them now. It was like a computer software company similar to
Oh, okay. So
Microsoft.
he's very well off.
He was, if it wasn't for
Was,
Dean.
yeah. And when
She,
she says Dean, she's talking about Rima.
sorry,
Just
yeah.
for clarity. No, no, no. It's fine. It's fine. It's just it's fine. You don't need to
Clarity.
apologize for
Hey, I'm
that.
Canadian. I need to apologize.
A.
Eh? What's that about, eh? Yeah. About 1990, by the time my brothers came along, uh, Rima decided to go with. There was a curriculum given out by Pensacola Christian College in Florida.
Florida.
Yeah. And it was like a creationist anti-evolution school course, like with everything about God and everything like that. And which, like, I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I don't have any problems with that, except it was a bit misleading.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, that. No, I mean, I'm not gonna go there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's misleading.
Yeah, to say the least. Um, so yeah, by the time I came along in 2000, that curriculum was what the cult stuck with for education. And then there was also a Becca, that was the main program, and Alpha and Omega. And when the Shiny Happy People documentary came out about the Duggar family, when I listened to it, it was like, oh my God, I know exactly what you went through, because same, like no black nail polish, no nail polish whatsoever, no rings, no jewelry, no makeup. Hair has to be natural colors, like can't dye it. You're not allowed to cut it short. No skirts.
Hold your hand up for the camera. You got black nail polish on.
Oh yeah. This is why I wear it now, because it's kind of like a yeah, so that I can go like, oh, you can't hear me? Let me turn it up. Yeah.
So okay, they're using these curriculums, and I do know a little bit about homeschooling because, like I said in part one, I had to homeschool my daughter briefly last year.
Kudos to you for that, by the way. It's not easy to homeschool properly.
No, it wasn't, and I had to have help.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like her mother and one of her mother's friends stepped in to help pull her through because I'm a truck driver. I'm home every night, but I'm still gone a lot.
Exactly. That's tough. Yeah.
But she lives with me, so
yeah.
So just like I had help.
That's amazing.
But yeah, I have a good relationship with her mother.
I love that.
As far as like that, but she lives here, and she's 14, and she's being raised in her formidable years.
Yeah.
By a Generation Xer.
What better way to be raised?
So she's going to be a Generation Xer. Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So, yeah, like with this curriculum, homeschooling up until until COVID, pretty much, homeschooling in Canada was always seen as a cult-ish thing to do. Surprise, surprise. I wonder why.
Yeah.
And I was not allowed to get my GED, which is the Canadian equivalent of like an SAT test, going and getting your diploma equivalent. I was not allowed to do that.
Same in the States.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
No, yeah. I wasn't allowed to take my GED because they deemed it unnecessary. Because
college is a sin.
Yeah, because education means that you're smart and you can figure out that what's going on isn't right.
You can think for yourself.
Oh,
yep.
Horrors. I was going to become a veterinary technician, so I could apply for that through mature student process, which is like if you're 19 or older, you don't need a diploma or equivalent. So they were like, oh, if you're just going to go through that, then you don't need to get a college diploma or equivalent or whatever.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But now I'm a graphic designer second year student going way better, and it's something that I want to do. So it's awesome.
Yeah. So you obviously did go to college to get your degree in graphic design.
Yeah.
And that's freaking awesome.
Thank you.
And so, okay, the cult folded completely when Rima died, other than the fact that they tried to keep it going, and I personally don't think there's any need to really go into that unless you do. But if they tried to go legit and it didn't work and it fizzled and died.
Yeah. But the name was changed to Light of Hope Church.
Take us through what happened when she died.
Okay, so she was out in British Columbia with her oldest son, and actually, interestingly enough, her oldest son also had Ricky's father at that point, who also had dementia. Rima had.
Wait, her oldest son was also against her. He had escaped as well, just like Ricky did. Why is he back with her? Because
Because.
it's mom and she's in a bad time or something.
No, because he came back and he was like, "You guys have done enough in caring for her. You gave me time to mentally prepare myself and get better so that I can handle dealing with her, caring for her in the last years of her
This is
life. Give her to me.
this is the
You've
one
done
that
enough."
this is the one that was a missionary, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And he had
Okay,
an amazing partner who helped him through it too.
so he basically killed the cult.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
because at first I was like, what? But then, you explained it. I was just like, oh, okay. He basically stepped in. He's just like, okay, basically enough is enough.
Yep.
I'm taking your figurehead away.
Yep.
I'm and so
If he
like
hadn't done that, I don't think I would be here talking to you today.
that's freaking amazing. That's freaking amazing.
That's why I love sharing this story, because in spite of all the bad and all the harm that was done, there were so many victims who decided not to continue the path that they'd been set on, and they calmly, gently, lovingly even stepped in and did what they could. And they've been instrumental in helping me survive.
You see, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he knew that when she had her faculties straight, there was nothing he could do.
Yeah.
He hated it because he escaped from it.
Yep.
So same with Ricky and the other son.
Yep.
But so now she's got dementia, and she can't. She doesn't know where the hell she is and all that stuff. But she's still like dictating scripture and stuff like that.
Yep.
Calling people demons. I would imagine that the exorcisms probably stepped up at that point during that time when she had dementia.
Yeah. Up until maybe like a year and a half before she left. So 2016, I would say, because she left in 2017, to go to be with her missionary son. Around 2016, the exorcisms kind of calmed down, and there wasn't really so much talk about them. I think it was because she didn't have the energy to waste on them anymore.
And nobody else wanted to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh.
Everybody was glad that she forgot about them.
But that the son, her oldest son, the one that was a missionary, he knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He's just like, okay, now she doesn't have control of her faculties. I can end this.
Yeah.
And that's what he did.
Not only that, Rima still had a bit of awareness, but not enough to, like, she couldn't walk. And at that point, Rima's missionary son had Ricky's father, the hero who was instrumental. He had dementia to the point where he wasn't cognizant at all anymore.
That sucks.
Yeah, but he was happy. And
well, he had his sons.
Yeah, exactly. And
he had rescued all three of his sons.
Literally. Yeah. And when the missionary's son brought Rima to the house, he didn't know her. He had no idea who she was or what was going on, but Rima did. And Rima had to live the last few years of her life with this man that she hated who she had to treat nicely or else she didn't get food.
Wait, who was this man? Who was this man?
Ricky's
Was
father.
it this? They were roommates?
They were roommates! Oh my god, they were roommates.
That's poetic justice. I mean, but it's poetic justice with Rima. I don't know about her. I don't know about, you know.
Oh, the missionary son
ex-husband.
did that on purpose. He told me.
Oh, because he was already basically
Gone.
incoherent at that time. He wouldn't know. Yeah, Metallica could perform in his bedroom at full blast, like stadium blast, and he wouldn't even know what was going on.
Exactly.
Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Okay, but so she had to sit there and look at him
every day for almost 3 years.
Brilliant. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And she couldn't do a thing, and she was forced to wear pants that she hated.
Blue jeans?
Yes.
Oh God, I love this.
And her missionary son kept bringing beer to Ricky's father, and which Rima hated. So she got to watch basically her ex get all the awesome things in life, and she didn't get anything.
So he's like he's cognitive enough to know that, like, okay, my son is giving me a beer.
Yeah. But he had no idea who Rima was. Like, he had no memory of anything bad happening.
I love this.
Yeah.
I freaking love this.
And he would turn to her and be like, "Oh, hello. Have we met before? You seem really nice." And she'd be like... she would like turn away and like mumble under her breath, and he would forget that it happened like 30 seconds ago, like 10-second Tom.
and then he'd look at her again and say, "Hello, exactly. I don't know you. Have we?"
Exactly. It was like a living nightmare for her, and I'm like, yes.
This is the most satisfying end to a cult story that I have ever heard.
Right? Oh, yeah.
So when this was going on, I would imagine that her son probably kept it on the down low until after she died.
And then he emailed us pictures afterwards, and then we all just kind of gathered around and watched them, and there were a few moments where the whole room was clapping.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap! So the remaining, I was expecting like an outpouring of like despair. It's like, oh my God, our leader has died, and all that stuff. But no, they were happy that she was gone.
The first Sunday that she left, we played actual music instead of just a cappella singing. It was like, it was.
So pretty much everybody at that point, including your parents, had woke up.
Yeah.
That's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
I don't hate your parents anymore.
Since then, my dad has done nothing but improve. He's becoming more and more honest. Like, I think my dad has sociopathic tendencies. I've talked with my
How could you not?
Yeah.
How could he not at going through all of that?
Yeah.
How could he not?
Yeah.
But
my mom,
it's just like it's in nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
It's still nurture, but much later on in life.
Yeah, and my dad doesn't have emotions, and he only learned to recognize uncomfortable emotions in other people and like how to respect them and when enough is enough because of us kids and because of Nate. Yeah.
You were saying something about your mom?
Yeah. My mom, she was doing better for a while. Unfortunately, she's becoming more and more like Rima every day. She does have a lot of health problems, and she has like pre-diabetes, like I mentioned. She's been through cancer, most likely because of Rima. And
Well, I yeah, that podcast that I mentioned, The Cult Next Door. The survivors of that, because it was so long and everything, they have autoimmune
yeah,
disease and everything, which has been like basically attributed to the trauma that they went through.
actually, it's funny you mentioned that. Last week, I had an appointment with a rheumatologist, and apparently I have fibromyalgia because of what I went through.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it, I'm working through it. It's definitely becoming better because of being able to live here. It's amazing living here. I love it so much. But
Well,
coping every day is, yeah.
I love, I love Colin. That guy's a superhero in my book.
For real, honestly.
But so basically, it's just like, okay, they wheel Rima out of out of there,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden, it's just basically just like everybody rejoices.
Yeah. There were a few people who were her successors.
Of course. There's
always
going
a
to be
few.
Yeah.
And some of them definitely tried their damnedest to try and force me to break up with Colin, but I had to follow my heart and what I knew was right, and that was definitely a breaking point in feeling like I had to do what they said and making my own choices.
So, these remnants, the people that still carried the flag and still worship the doctrine.
They still call her
everything.
Pastor Dean, or who is Rima, by the way.
Right. But they tried their damnedest to raise their flag on the thing, and everybody told them to fuck off.
More or less, yeah.
This is the greatest ending of a cult story that I have ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it doesn't always end this way.
No, it never ends this way.
Yeah. I want to tell my story. Like, there's hope. Like,
there definitely is.
Life will get better.
Yeah, this has been amazing. I'm just like, it's just like
goosebumps.
Yeah, I found them too. I'm not lying. I mean, it's just like chilling because I've never heard this type of an ending to a cult story.
Yeah.
Where it's just like everybody just basically woke up and said, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
And hauled ass, and then you got the people, "Hey, we should still be doing this and everything." You all need an exorcism and all this stuff, and everybody's just like, you know what? Piss off.
Yeah. Yeah, and like in this cult, in his Christian fellowship, it was like homophobic, anti-LGBTQ, anti-everything. Like, Dean would use every slur known to man, and which I hate. And now it's like the church that I found now in Port Perry, Sanctus Church. It's amazing. Like, the pastor there will read a section of scripture, and instead of making it more confusing to make you feel like you have to listen to him, he'll explain it in modern day language that is relatable.
Yeah.
And he did a service on, like, if you have something against gay people or like LGBTQ people, like, that's not really.
You're supposed to love you're supposed to love everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad,
regardless of their faults and everything.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I find it hard to love a cult leader or a serial killer or whatever.
Yeah.
But still, that this has been amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't, and God, I'm so glad that you reached out.
Yeah.
It's just like it's just like the worst story that I've told on the podcast.
The
is
ultimate revenge story.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
So, people that are out there that might be
struggling,
with, like maybe they're in a cult, maybe they're out but don't know what to do. This story, the second half of the story should really give you hope, because you know you know look at Desti. You can't, because you can't see it.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, but she's great. She's just like several years out of this hell. She's with a great family. She's got a great fiance, and cults the cult stories rarely end on such a high note.
Yeah.
And and I'm like so glad that you came on.
Yeah, me too.
But
the best advice I can give is trust your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Sit still, keep your mouth shut, keep your head down until you feel it's time to move, and then move. Do not wait.
Yeah. But I mean, anybody can wind up in a cult.
Yeah.
If you're it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how successful you are.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means that there's somebody nasty enough to use their smarts to trick you.
Somebody found you in a particular part, stage of your life,
or in a vulnerable moment,
and exploited it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said your mom was still loopy.
She's gotten a lot worse recently. Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
Is there any dementia going on there? Possibly, maybe.
Early onset.
Oh. Okay. So she's remembering the most intense moments of her life, and she's like bringing it back. Was she okay in between the end and now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what's going on there.
Yeah. Like, it was to the point where she was like almost okay with like abortion stuff. Like, I remember being 6 years old, starting like standing on the side of the road holding up anti-abortion signs, like, and like being forced to pass out pamphlets of like religious propaganda. And there was this one woman who I tried to hand it to her, and I think she had been involved in something like a cult before, and she was like, "Take me to your mother right now." And she chewed my mom. Like, she ripped her a new one for forcing us kids to go out there and do this. And thanks to her, that wasn't really a thing anymore, because it triggered Rima's paranoia about case worseners. So
I love that.
Yeah. Hashtag case worseners.
Born of me getting tongue tied.
Those are the best moments, though.
Oh yeah, that's why I leave them in, because they're funny.
Exactly.
But when this episode comes out, people that you know are going to find it, and there are going to be people that come at you.
Well, like, I gotta speak my truth, and this is still affecting my life, and I want to have kids one day, and I'll be damned if they don't get trauma from me or anything related to with me. Like, I'm not gonna let that happen. And part of that is speaking out about what happened, and I want to help other people. Like, I've been through stuff, I've survived. Part of what kept me going was wanting to be able to help other people. So I'm really glad that you Bill do stuff like this that I can come and share, like the happier moments, like there's hope.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's just like, okay, part two didn't need to be as horrible as part one, and I'm glad that it wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just, but at the same time, I mean, you're gonna have, yeah, you're gonna have probably family members. Your parents might not even appreciate this.
Well,
I know
probably
your
not.
mom won't,
Yeah.
but your dad probably won't either.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's just when I told my story, I got I got pushback from my family because people were thinking that you're just talking shit about your mom.
Yeah.
I'm not.
No, yeah.
I'm telling what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I can't exactly say yeah, I was raised in a cult. See you next week.
Yeah.
I have to tell what happened, and my mom and I reconciled before she died.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, and it's just, but there are going to be people that come at you. There are going to be people that try to weaponize it against you.
Yeah.
Like I was, my most recent ex, I was with her for 4 years, and whenever it was a totally toxic relationship. I mean, she was horrible, and her way to shut me up whenever we had an argument was, "Oh, okay, I get why you were saying that. You were raised in a cult. I forgot."
That's horrible.
And it just,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. And what I have to say to you is, it's like, okay, well, anybody that comes at you and says you just need to forget about this and move on, or anybody that tries to weaponize it against you, fuck those people. You don't need them. I don't care who they are. I don't care if it's your parents. I don't care if it's Colin. I know it wouldn't be Colin, but I'm just saying, with me, it was my significant other.
Yeah.
You don't need those people.
Yeah. It's actually
anybody that.
Sorry.
Because I guarantee you, those same people that told you that you need to move on, if something traumatic happened to them, they would want to, you to listen to them.
Yeah, it's actually crazy.
But if you told them, if you told them, hey, you should just move on, they'd get all pissed off.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy that you said that word for word, because that's what my mother told me about my brother who did stuff. Like my.
Well, that's different though.
Yeah.
That's covering up sexual assault.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a cat, Dakota. He saved my life, literally. There were a few times where I was walking to go swallow a bottle of pills, and he physically blocked me and would not let me. And he ended up getting a horrible bladder infections and passed away. And when I was struggling with being almost homeless, I asked my parents to take care of my cat, and they did not. My mom did not, and he ended up passing away. And when I was burying him, my mom was trying to get me to allow my brother to come to to my cat's funeral, and I said,
Nate?
No, sorry, the brother who assaulted me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she got very upset, and she was like, you need to stop holding it over his head that he did that to you, and stop making him live through that. And it's like, he would still be doing
Victim
that
blaming.
if it wasn't for me telling you, because I was afraid I was going to hell when I was 6. Like, exactly. Yeah. Victim blaming. And so, yeah, it's crazy you say that, because I've heard that word for word. So it's like, how did you know that?
Because I've been there, done that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it's just, if there's anything that I can pass on to you or anybody else that might be in the situation, whether it's cult, whether it's TTI, whether it's even domestic abuse, it's just, if don't let anybody tell you just get over it, because those people, if somebody says that to you, they don't give a fuck about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just don't want to hear about it. But like I said, guarantee you, if something bad happens to them, they're going to want to tell you all about it.
Yep.
So, yeah, you don't need them, and it's hard. It's hard. Like if somebody that you care about, and they're going to come out when this episode airs.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you fair warning. They will. It's like you're a lot younger than I am.
Yeah.
And you're tackling this a lot younger than I did when I tackled it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm just talking about what, it's like happened to me and everything. And, I told you how old I was. I'm 29 years old. No. No.
Yeah, you look it too.
I wish I was 29. I think I'm pretty good looking for 50 though.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you ever need somebody to talk to, just freaking reach out. I'm serious.
Thank you. I'll definitely keep that in mind. And same.
And
anybody who's listening, like if you want somebody to talk to.
But thanks a hell of a lot for listening. Appreciate the hell out of it. This has been an amazing episode.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it coming. Desti for his first time out on a podcast talking about, cult and everything.
Yep.
Desti, you were amazing. You were incredible.
Thank you.
And you know what? The more you talk about it, the easier it gets. It's never going to go away, but the more you talk about it, the easier it gets. But please like, share, follow the podcast, comment, review, rate, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, definitely keep listening to Bill. He's amazing. What he's doing is awesome.
I'll Cash App you the payment after we're done.
I take payment in maple syrup and freedom bucks.
Oh God. Oh God.
Give him
But
a
no
likey.
gummy bears. Because gummy bears come from rendering plants, and we know what goes on at rendering plants.
Oh.
God. God, I love this. One of my favorite interviews that I've ever done. I love Desti. She's great.
This is awesome. I love being here. Yeah.
So, anyway, until next week. Hold on, I forgot to say this. If you like us, tell a friend. If you hate us, tell a foe.
Tell somebody.
Yeah, and until next week, later.